All right, let's get it started here on the Panther-Lair Post-Game. Look who is 5-1 for the first time in 6 years. Look who's 5-1 overall, 2-0 in the ACC, and sitting, well, I mean, I guess you could say sitting pretty. I don't think there's anything, any objection you would make to that, because the thing I'm going to say now is the thing I'm going to say a bunch of times over the course of the next hour, or however long it is that we sit here and hang out on the Panther-Lair Post-Game in the aftermath of Pitt's 28-7 win at Virginia Tech, is right now, and sometimes I don't want to say, like, you know, any big points I already have. I don't want to say them right off the bat, right at the beginning, because I know people are just starting to roll in. We got a few comments jumping in. We appreciate that. You know, I want to give people time to get here, but I'm going to say this a bunch of times, okay? I need my whiteboard is what I need. You remember the whiteboard that I had like last year when I was listing like some of those bad losses, you know, year after year? I need the whiteboard so that I can list, if there was a whiteboard here, imagine that there was. I don't even have a blank piece of paper I could use. I would write quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, running back, defense. And I wouldn't list all of those with the same amount of confidence or the same level of quality, but I would say right now, in the aftermath of this game, Pitt's second win in the ACC this year, their fifth win of the season in 6 tries, they are legit at all those spots. Pitt has a legit quarterback, legit wide receivers, plural, a legit tight end, really 2 of those. They've got a legit running back who's emerging that we certainly have a lot to talk about on that regard today. They've got a defense that looks solid enough. I don't know if they're a complete team. I don't know if they have as much balance as the TV announcers like to say. I don't know about their, I think there are still questions about special teams. They obviously didn't need to kick any field goals to win the game. There were some questionable punts that didn't look very good. But on the whole, if you were going to list the attributes that this team has right now, you wouldn't find a lot of weaknesses and a lot of holes. And you find a lot of strengths, or at the very least legitimate players at their positions. And when you have that, when you have the kind of sort of across-the-board talent that Pitt appears to have, you can win some games. You can win a lot of games. And when you've got the schedule that Pitt has coming up, you know, obviously, we're going to talk about that. And certainly this coming Saturday, a week from today, who knows what we're going to be sitting here talking about on the Panther-Lair Post-Game a week from now. I really don't know. I'm going to spend the whole next week trying to figure it out, and you will too. But you look at the 5 games after that, who do you see on that schedule that is concerning, given the balance that Pitt has in their not just in their offense, but in their team right now, where the offense is showing an incredible amount of balance run to pass, and the defense is showing that they can be pretty solid. And most of all, they can take advantage of bad play by the opponent, which is what Pitt's defense did today. Now, they gave up some plays. And I told you that was going to happen. I told you that throughout the week. I wrote it in the 321 column. I said it on the podcast on Wednesday night. I said it on the Panthers Insider Show this morning on the Fan. They're going to give up some of those big plays. They had the long passing play that led to the touchdown. Burmeister ran for 17 yards after Pitt went 3 and out the one time. These things are going to happen. First of all, just because it's football and guys make plays. The touchdown catch was an incredible play. Guys make plays. This is going to happen. But if they keep getting after the quarterback like they did, if they keep stopping the run like they have, and showing some adjustments too, because we shouldn't ignore the fact that Virginia Tech hit one of those RPO slants real early in the game. I forget if it was the first drive or the second drive. It was very early in the game. But it was almost the same kind of thing. It might have been, I'm looking here. Yeah, they got about 30 yards out of one on their second drive. And then they didn't go back to it. They had a 2nd and 6 and a 3rd and 2 after that, and they tried to run the ball each time. They tried for it on 4th down, too, with a quarterback sneak that didn't make it. But later, they did run one of those, and Brandon Hill almost picked it off because they, according to the TV announcers, they played a zone as opposed to a man defense. That's an adjustment. That's a change in the coverage that Virginia Tech was not expecting, and that's why, I think partially you didn't see as much of that throughout this game, even though the plays were still there to be made. But Pitt either adjusted or did what they were supposed to do, but they stopped it. And I think this defense can be good enough to get turnovers. They get another interception today. They can get, let me bring up the defensive stats real quick. On sacks and tackles for loss, they end up with only 3 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. I'm surprised about that. I actually thought there were more than that. Officially 3 quarterback hurries. I think there was a little bit more pressure than that. The defense, obviously they gave up 7 points, right? So it's, saying the defense did enough. That's obvious. They gave up 7 points. They gave up 224 yards, less than 100 yards on the ground, 134 passing yards. They played well. They played well against an opponent that wasn't very good. And Virginia Tech's offense stinks. Burmeister, maybe he's better if he's running. I think Trey Turner is a player. He can make some plays. He's good, but on the whole, that offense was out of sorts throughout the game. The wind was a problem for them, but the wind was a problem Pitt had to deal with as well. And Pitt still managed to have Kenny Pickett throw over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. They still managed 400 yards of offense, pretty much an even split. 203 rushing or 208 pass, 203 passing and 208 rushing. Virginia Tech their offense was just out of sorts throughout the game. They never really found any kind of rhythm. They were never able to do anything well. Some of that is on them kind of stinking. And some of that is on, I think, Pitt's defense playing a pretty sound game and being able to do enough to keep it so that the offense could get 1 touchdown in the second half, which is the second week in a row that they've only scored 1 touchdown in the second half. But the offense could also feel comfortable going out and trying to eat clock, which they eventually decided to do in the fourth quarter with a drive that was friggin' like 12 minutes long. And there's a lot, I just gave the very, very brief version of some things we definitely have to dig into and talk about. But I think a lot of people have strolled in, so we'll introduce it as the Panther-Lair Post-Game. And, we are getting together here to talk about Pitt's 28-7 win at Virginia Tech. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. It's Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all there at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards, which they're buzzing right now. Let me just check on the message boards as we're live here. The game thread, where's the official game thread? There it is. 913 posts in that thread, about 8,000 views. That thing's been humming along for the past 4 hours, no question. And people are all over the board just, feeling pretty good because Pitt just went down to Blacksburg and took care of business. Took care of business. It's not a game that you're going to look at and be like, oh, they were just so good at this. They were just so good at that. What they were good at was beating Virginia Tech. It didn't have the flashy big plays down the field. And we could talk about little things that they did here or there. We could talk about Jared Wayne. We could talk about Gavin Bartholomew. We definitely talk about Israel Abanikanda. We talk about that final drive of the game, that fourth quarter drive, those 11 minutes and 28 seconds. We can talk about all these things here and there. But on the whole, it was just, it was a very sort of business-like win. And I tell you, I got a lot of respect for how this team responded because it wasn't easy going. They go 3 and out in the first drive. They drove for the touchdown, 94 yards on their second drive. And then I think the rest of the half, they had, maybe gained about up until, they started scoring touchdowns again in the second half or in the second quarter. They had about 50 yards of offense. They were running into some adversity. They were being challenged. Virginia Tech's defense was playing them well. And they were making it difficult. And I think coming out of the Georgia Tech game, it sort of felt like things were going to be easy. Now, I don't know if we would admit it, but that's how it felt in that Georgia Tech game. It felt easy for Pitt's offense to go out and put up, half a century on Georgia Tech on the road. It seemed easy, but I think we knew, and I think we talked about on the show on Wednesday night, they were going to run into challenges. There were going to be teams that slowed the offense down a little bit. Not everybody was going to give up 40 points or 50 points to this team. And this was the first game this season where they scored less than less than 40, really. And they end up with 28. But the question was, how would they respond on both sides of the ball? If an opponent was slowing down the offense, how would how would Pitt respond? And I think they were very businesslike about it. Again, I mean, they come out on their first drive, they go 3 and out. Defense does its job, forces a punt. The punt gets down to the 6, and it's looking like it's going to be a tough game for the offense. They march down the field, and not with big plays, not with explosive, anything crazy. They just chipped away, and they go 94 yards for a touchdown with a finishing with a pass to the freshman tight end, Gavin Bartholomew, because they have that much confidence in basically everybody on this offense right now, and they just kept working. And when they got turned away, went 3 and out a couple drives in a row, it doesn't seem like there was much discouragement in that offense. They just came back out and went back to work, confident that what they were doing was eventually going to break through, which it eventually did. They take advantage of the interception. Eric Hallett has the interception late in the second quarter, gives Pitt the ball at the 29. They score a couple plays after that, and then on the next drive, they march down the field and get some big plays from Jared Wayne. Izzy Abanikanda has a big run, and Pitt scores to take the 21-0 lead into halftime. They just stuck to what they did, believed in what they did, and continued to work at it, and it was very businesslike. This wasn't a flashy win, but it doesn't need to be. And just because it wasn't flashy doesn't mean it wasn't, kind of dominating or controlling. Pitt was in control of this game. And I know after Virginia Tech scored their touchdown, it was 28-7. I had, there were some text messages, some concern started creeping up among the Pitt fans, but the team just sort of stuck to it and believed. I mean, first of all, they believed, and I think they believed, and I know I believed that Virginia Tech wasn't going to be able to do that 3 more times. I was pretty confident about that, and that ended up being the case. But I think they believed that the offense could come out and take care of business that they needed to, in the way that they needed to, getting down the field and taking a lot of time off the clock, which is ultimately what they did. They just went out and they acted. I think they conducted themselves like a team that should have some of the aspirations that we're talking about. Not a team that's sort of surprised to be enjoying success. Not a team that's sort of, oh, what are we doing here? Oh, man, or thinking too high of themselves. They just walked out there confident in what they were doing, confident in what they were supposed to be doing, and took care of business. And did it, I don't want to say in all 3 phases, although I think the special teams had their moments. I think Kirk Christodoulou had a nice punt. I think his final punt was a pretty good one. Jalen Barden got a few yards on some returns. I actually want to bring up his stats because he actually had, let me see here. He had 1 kick return for 23 yards, but he had 2 punt returns for 22 yards, which is a pretty good number, actually, for Pitt this year, where the punt return has been an adventure and hasn't really produced much in the way of positive yardage. He actually got a little bit out of that. So, I mean, I think you've got some good special teams performances, not great. I think you still have things you need to work on there. And, again, you need to see, you haven't been in a situation yet where you need field goals to win. They haven't had to rely on the kicking game to get a victory yet or to hold off an opponent. We'll see what happens when the pressure's sort of on in those situations. But, I mean, overall, and the last comment that just come in, there's a lot of comments here on the live chat, but Patrick DeSantis says, what team in the NCAA wants to play a game against Virginia Tech in Blacksburg? Yeah, it's not an easy place to play. And I know those fans gave up on Virginia Tech pretty quickly in this game. I think a lot of them were probably leaving. The crowd got quieter as the afternoon went on and turned to evening. But it's not an easy place to walk into. And then you add in the element of the weather with the wind and everything. It was not a walk in the park. It was not a smooth trip to Atlanta. But Pitt still very much took care of business with a pretty balanced game. Really balanced game. All right, if you are on the live stream, lots of comments and questions coming in already. I don't know if we can get to all of these. Definitely going to try to get as many as we can. But if you want to make sure your comment or question gets read or answered, you can be a super chatter. Click that little $sign down there at the bottom. Throw a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate that support, and we will definitely get to your comments and questions. Like Michael B. who is one of our regular super chatters. We always appreciate it, man. Definitely big thanks to you. He says, hi, Chris, great win. Yes, I'm going to ask this. If Pitt wins out, will they make the playoffs? I really think the way Pitt is playing, they can do it. If no playoffs, a New Year's Day Bowl will be phenomenal. Exciting times for Pitt. Oh, yeah, I hope you guys have a beer. It is exciting times for Pitt. If they win out, can they make the playoffs? Yes. Will they? It depends on what's going on around them. There were losses in the top 25 today. Kentucky was number 11. They lost. Most of the other ones, actually, most of the other losses in the top 25 so far today, we're talking right now around 7:30 on Saturday night. Most of the other losses in the top 25 today are losses that are going to help Pitt when the next polls come out. Texas, number 25, Florida, number 20, BYU, number 19, Arkansas, number 17. Those teams are all going to drop. Texas is going to drop out. Florida will drop down if not out. BYU and Arkansas are going to drop down if not out. Pitt will be ranked. You can't not rank Pitt at this point. They are looking legitimately like the best team in the ACC. And if not the best team, they are one of the top two. Along with Wake Forest, depending on... This is Wake... What's Wake doing? They have a game this week? They don't even play this week, do they? Is Wake Forest off? Yeah, Wake Forest is off. So nothing's going to happen there. NC State's ranked in the top 25. They're going to kick off here any minute at Boston College. So, we won't know about that one. But, Pitt right now, if they're not the best team, if they haven't looked like the best team in the ACC, they're number 2 behind Wake Forest. Simply because Wake Forest is undefeated. They're gonna be ranked in this week's poll. I don't see how you get left out at 5-1, and particularly when you have 4 teams in the from 19 to 25 who lost, 17, 19, 20, and 25 lost. They're all gonna drop down and out. If they don't all fall out, they're all going to drop. So you're going to have movement there, and you're going to have spaces for a team like Pitt to step in. And at 5-1 overall, 2-0 in the ACC, their offense is going to drop. Their numbers are not going to be as good. You average 52 points per game through the first 5, and then you'll only score 28 this week. Those numbers are going to go down. You'll probably drop a little bit in the rankings. But I think what you lost in terms of points, or whatever style points you lost in terms of scoring, I think you made up for with some more balance in your offense. Pitt finishes with 208 rushing yards at Virginia Tech. We're going to have to go back and look and see the last time Pitt rushed for more than 200 yards on the road against an ACC opponent. I'm going to just look at last week's game just to make sure, or 2 weeks ago, just to make sure they didn't. No, they only had 181 at Georgia Tech. I was going to say, boy, I would look like a real idiot. They probably had more than, they definitely had more than 200 the last time they played at Georgia Tech. So it's only been like 2 games since that happened. But you look at the balance of this offense right now. And I'm guessing when we talk to Kenny Pickett on Wednesday for the Kenny Pickett show, he's going to be more than happy to have only 200 passing yards today when when the trade-off is what the running game was able to do and how the running game was able to step up and what Izzy Abanikanda and Vincent Davis were able to do on the ground against Virginia Tech. I think he's going to be more than happy with that. Also, speaking of the Kenny Pickett show, ESPN2 shout-out. It's not ESPN, but it's the ESPN2 shout-out to the Kenny Pickett show. I believe they said Kenny Pickett does a show on the internet through Rivals. So he didn't quite get the name of the show right. He didn't quite get the name of the website. He said Rivals. He said Kenny Pickett does a show on the internet. Okay, yes, it's a show on the internet, but it has a name, the Kenny Pickett Show, and it's through Panther-Lair.com. It's not Rivals, it's Panther-Lair.com, but it's okay. We're getting there. Like Pitt, you got to earn respect, right? You got to build up to get there, and so this is a little baby step. We got a little shout out on ESPN2. We're gonna work our way up to national television here coming up soon. With the Kenny Pickett show shout-outs. So that was great, though. That was funny to hear right after, I think, one of their first screens of the game, too. They gave a shout-out because that was something we talked to Kenny about. If you watched the Kenny Pickett show, you heard Kenny talk about how much he likes the screens and how important they are to the offense. And so I appreciate those guys, though, giving a shout-out to it. All right, let's Let's get into the comments and questions. All right, let's talk about it here. Luca Carroll says the Coastal is Pitt's to lose. Let's effing go. Yeah, I mean, who else are you going to pick? I mean, Virginia beat Duke today, 48-0. Duke is 0-3 in the ACC. They were never going to be a factor. Virginia's 3-2. I don't think. I mean, despite what they did to Duke today, they held that Mateo Durant kid, the leading rusher in the ACC, held him to 82 yards. But Virginia's defense, I think, is just susceptible. You know what I mean? I think Virginia's defense can be beat, particularly by an offense like Pitt's. They might give up a bunch of points and yards to Virginia, but I think they're going to score enough to win that game. Carolina beat Miami. Miami's now 2-4 on the season. They're 0-2 in the ACC. They're a mess, and their defense doesn't look very good. They, give up 45 to Carolina. Carolina, though, is 4-3. And they're 3-3 in the ACC. Again, they have a defensive problem. They gave up 42 to Miami. Miami's not good enough to score 42, but that's what ended up happening. And it's, I think you look at both of those teams. I mean, are you going to pick either one of them? It's hard to pick anybody who already has 2 or 3 losses in the conference to be the winner, because Carolina now at 3-3, they have to win out. And they only have 2 games left. Who do they, let me see who Carolina has on the schedule. Obviously, they have Pitt and Wake Forest. So they actually play at Notre Dame in 2 weeks, and then they host Wake Forest, and then they come to Pitt on a Thursday night. So they have 2 more conference games, and they have to win both of those to have a chance. Because I don't know, and that's if 5-3 can win the division, and I'm not sure it can. This might be a year where you need to go 6-2, in which case Virginia at 3-2 has to win. They have to beat Georgia Tech at home, and then they have to win at Pitt and beat Virginia Tech at home. Are they going to win all 3 of those games? Probably not. Looking who else is in the Coastal. Georgia Tech didn't play this week. They're off. But Pitt effectively already has like a 3-game lead on them from beating them head-to-head. And Georgia Tech already having a couple losses. So, is Pitt the Coastal favorite? Yeah. I mean, I think you have to say they're the Coastal favorite right now. They're 2-0. Nobody else is undefeated in the division. And nobody else looks very good in the division. I mean, I think it's a matter of how good Pitt looks, and it's a matter of how not good the other teams look. I mean, absolutely. I think Pitt is the favorite in the Coastal right now, and they should be. Super chatters jumping in. Mark Doyle as a super chatter. Appreciate it. Mark, let me know if you have something you want to ask. He didn't say anything. Joe New says he's a super chatter as well. I appreciate the support. Says Virginia Tech is not a bad team. We are now 1-0 versus not bad teams. I will believe when we beat Clemson. Western Michigan loss is so frustrating. I would say Tennessee is not a bad team, Joe New. I know that when Pitt beat them, they had their bad quarterback playing, but they're on a little bit of a run here. They play Ole Miss tonight at home, but they're 4-2 overall, 2-1 in the SEC. I think that's a decent game. I would say Georgia Tech, they're not great, but they're not a bad team. I mean, I think they have some talent, and they have some things they can do to be pretty dangerous against teams. But, I mean, yeah, obviously they need to. Clemson's going to be a big test next week. There's no question about that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Let's get to some of the other comments and questions here. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, huge win. I don't want to sound like the coach here, but let's enjoy this one, and we got a huge game next week. Yeah, I mean, obviously. Huge game next week. Now, the good thing for us is you and I can sit here and talk about this game all we want. We can talk about the Clemson game all we want. We can talk about the ACC championship game all we want. Hell, you want to talk about the playoffs? We can talk about playoffs. And it's not going to make a lick of difference to what they actually do next week when they play Clemson. It's not going to matter. I think this team, we talk about worrying about this team getting too high on themselves or reading their press clippings or, thinking they're better than they are or taking a game for granted. Going into next Saturday, I'll say, number one, nobody's overlooking Clemson. No matter how weak Clemson might look, no matter how much they might look like they're down, no matter how much they struggled to get out of the Carrier Dome last night with a win, and they barely escaped 17-14, it doesn't matter. They're still Clemson, and they're still going to have Clemson uniforms and Clemson, helmets and Clemson. It's still Clemson. And anybody who faces Clemson this year is going to be up for that game. There's no chance that Pitt walks into that game thinking we can cakewalk through this. And I think this game today gives me even more confidence about the fact that Pitt's not going to overlook any opponents, because this would have been an opportunity to do so. 2 weeks off, spending all this time reading and hear about how you're 74% chance to win the Coastal and 58% chance to win the ACC and 9% chance to make the playoffs and all these things, and Kenny Heisman and Jordan Addison's one of the best receiver in the country. All this stuff. There are a lot of opportunities for your head to get really inflated during these 2 weeks from between the Georgia Tech game and Virginia Tech game, and I didn't see any of it. Did you? I didn't see any indication on the field that these guys were overlooking Virginia Tech, that they weren't up for it, that they didn't take it seriously. This is a senior-led team, led by number 8, as the key senior on this group. But there's a lot of upperclassmen. There's a lot of guys who have played a lot, and those guys are setting a tone, I think. Now, Carter Warren is a senior, and the tone he set was 3 false starts, so I'm not exactly sure of that message. But these guys, I don't see them overlooking an opponent, at least not at this point, because they didn't do it today. This was the game where you come out and, you kind of get out ahead of yourself and think you're better than you are. But they didn't do that. I didn't get a single indication of that. And again, they're not going to overlook Clemson. They're not going to walk, even if, Clemson's not ranked, they're not going to get back into, if you win 17-14 at Syracuse, is that enough to get you back into the top 25? I kind of don't think so. But even though Clemson's not going to be ranked when they come to Heinz Field next week, even though they don't have a Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson or a Mike Williams or a Travis Etienne or any of those guys, they're still Clemson. And that's still a huge game. And that place is going to be electric. Pitt fans, if you don't show up next Saturday, if that's not the kind of game that brings you out, 3:30 kickoff against Clemson, national championship winning program, the cream of the crop, the premier ACC program, and you've got a legit chance to put them down on your home field, you don't show up? I don't know. That would say a lot about Pitt fans if the fans don't show up. I don't know if it's going to be 68,000, but that place should be like 50,000 plus, 55,000 plus for attendance for that game, because there's no good. I don't know what the weather's going to be, but who cares? There's no reason to skip that game. Pitt should have right now, if Pitt's smart, there are people in the ticket office working right now answering the phones, that if you want to call up and try and get tickets to that game, you can call and try. You know what I mean? They should have people working right now answering the phone, selling tickets, because Pitt fans should be on the phone buying tickets to go watch Pitt play Clemson next week. Which is huge. This is one of the biggest games in Heinz Field since I don't even know when. When was the last game at Heinz Field that was this big? Notre Dame in 2009, Cincinnati in 2009. This is a huge game, a huge opportunity for Pitt. All right, it's Kurt46 has the question. I think a lot of people were wondering, why did they stop giving Israel Abanikanda the ball in the second half? And this is a big question. And it's something I wondered about during the game. Izzy Abanikanda, 77 yards on 10 carries in the first half, and somehow he comes out and is not on the field. He's not on the field in the second half. Or in the third quarter. He didn't play in the third quarter. And I want to find the exact sequence here. It was, okay, here. So it was the drive. So Pitt scored 2 touchdowns at the end of the second quarter, right? The drive before that, Abanikanda's the running back out there. Busts off an 18-yard run to convert 2nd and 7. Then he's got a 2-yard run. He sets up 2nd and 8. And on 2nd and 8, Kenny Pickett throws to Lucas Krull. The pass is off the mark. Krull is wide open. And the reason the pass is off the mark is because Israel Abanikanda just whiffed on a block. It looked like he didn't even try. All right? And I don't know if Kenny Pickett got hit on the play or just rushed the throw or whatever it was. Third down, they tried to screen to Taysier Mack that was almost intercepted. We talk about Taysier Mack in a little bit. That's fine. But I have to think that Izzy Abanikanda's absence in the third quarter was tied to that. And then he had the play, was it the previous drive or 2 drives earlier? The second play of the second quarter, 3rd and 4, Pickett throws to Jared Wayne, got a big gain. You like that? And then Abanikanda, the play comes back because Abanikanda was called for tripping. So 2 pretty bad moves in the blocking game in the second quarter for Izzy Abanikanda leaves him on the bench for the whole third quarter. Now he comes out in the fourth quarter, and he's pretty good. He had 11 carries for 72 yards in the fourth quarter. Finished the game, what did he have at the end? 21 for 140, 11 for 72 just in the fourth quarter alone. Helped put together a really long drive. But Abanikanda, and somebody else mentioned it, Joe New said Izzy is head and shoulders above Vincent Davis. I don't think there's any question. I don't think you could watch the game today, blocking aside, and not come to the conclusion that Israel Abanikanda is Pitt's best running back. I mean, he looks like a stud. He had a run on 3rd and 7 where he picked up 11 or 12 yards, and I tweeted it, and I know I wasn't the only person who was thinking it, where he ran straight forward into a pile, backed up, paused, used some patience, and then cut outside and picked up converted a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, something like that on his own. And it was a Le'Veon Bell type of run. And I know I'm not the only one who thought of that when we watched that. When you watch that play. I mean, he looked like Le'Veon Bell on that play, and he does that kind of thing sort of regularly. He's got that skill set, and he can catch passes, and he's that kind of a runner, a patient runner. I mean, he's a stud. I don't really think there's any two ways about it. I said that all off season. I said that I had high expectations for what he was going to become. I thought the times that we saw him on the field early this season, there were flashes of how good he could be. And then this game, I mean, it was all on display. When he got the opportunity, he was clearly the best back on the team. And this was with Rodney Hammond not even, this is with Rodney Hammond not even playing. Because I think Hammond can be really good too. But Abanikanda, I mean, he's the number one guy. He needs to be the number one guy. And if he needs to improve his blocking, then it's in everyone's best interest for him to get better in that regard. Because it's in everyone's best interest for him to be the number one running back on this team. Because if you have him out there and the O-line kind of blocks like they've been blocking now for a few weeks in a row, you have the makings of an effective running game. And if you can run the ball effectively with Kenny Pickett at quarterback and Jordan Addison at receiver and Lucas Krull and Gavin Bartholomew and Jared Wayne and Taysier Mack and Jalen Barden, I mean, you have a balanced, potent attacking offense. If you have games like this where teams are covering pretty well downfield and taking away, I mean, Jordan Addison ended up with 7 targets in this game, 5 catches for 62 yards. Not a terrible stat line, but not what we've come to expect from Jordan Addison. I mean, this was a down game by his standards. This was the kind of game he had last year, 5 for 62. Although he probably didn't average 12 yards per catch on most of his games last year. It wasn't really his strong point. But a game like this where the opponent is taking him away and taking away some of your deep passes, being able to run the ball to then set up play action is just going to be deadly. It's going to be deadly for this offense when they're able to do that consistently. And they might need it this week. I think they're going to have, Clemson's defense is really, really good. And Clemson's defense is going to make life really difficult for Pitt. If they can get something of a running game established, though, I think you can, obviously, it'll really open things up for this offense. Nathaniel Rumrill says, how are you going to enjoy your newfound ESPN fame? Well, again, they didn't actually shout out Panther-Lair.com or the Kenny Pickett Show or me or anything else. They just said Kenny Pickett has a show on the internet. We need to get a little more specific a more specific reference. Maybe on the broadcast this week, we'll get some of that. I have to ask Kenny good questions, I guess, to get comments that the broadcasters are going to want to, reflect on. Nick Presto says, third game now that we have been able to dictate the tempo with the lead in the fourth quarter using the run game. Very impressive. Yeah, I was adding this up. Pitt has had 2 full drives in the fourth quarter the last 2 weeks. One at Georgia Tech, one at Virginia Tech. Those 2 drives, Georgia Tech, they go 11 plays, 76 yards, 8 minutes and 3 seconds. Virginia Tech, they go 16 plays, 76 yards, 11 minutes and 28 seconds. Think about that today. Pitt held the ball for 11 minutes and 28 seconds in the fourth quarter. What does that leave for Virginia Tech? 3 minutes and 32 seconds of possession in a game where they're trailing by 3 touchdowns? And then you could actually add in the Georgia Tech game, they had the ball at the start of the fourth quarter, like when the quarter changed. And so they ended up possessing it for about 3 minutes and 45 seconds into the beginning of the fourth quarter. So if you look at the 2 fourth quarters combined, fourth quarter at Georgia Tech, fourth quarter at Virginia Tech, you look at a combined total of 23 minutes and 16 seconds of possession. 11 and a half minutes of possession on average in the last 2 fourth quarters. You're not giving the opponent any opportunity to do anything in that situation. And those are both games. I mean, Pitt's leading by 30 at that point at Georgia Tech. They're leading by 21 at that point at Virginia Tech. The opponent knows what's going to happen. This drive today against Virginia Tech, the 11-minute and 28-second drive, it was 16 plays. There were 2 passes, one on 3rd and 2. First third down they faced, and they converted with a 12-yard pass to Jordan Addison. And then on the very last play, the 4th and 5, they pick it through to Addison in the end zone. Just kind of I don't even know what the point of that was. I guess concern about having a field goal block or something like that. So 16 plays, 14 of them are running. You know what's going to happen. Same thing with the Georgia Tech drive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 plays. There were the 11 play drive that ran 8 minutes off the final 8 minutes out in the fourth quarter at Georgia Tech. 11 plays, you're up by 30. There was 1 pass. So both Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech knew what you were going to do. They knew you were going to run the ball. They knew you were going to hand it off, and they weren't able to stop it. Izzy Abanikanda, on this drive today, 11 carries for 72 yards. On that drive at Georgia Tech, he went 7 for 28. And then Rodney Hammond had like 5 carries for a bunch more, 10, 28, 43 yards or so. They know what's going to happen. Oh, incidentally, final stat for you on that. Fourth quarter, last 2 weeks, Izzy Abanikanda, 18 carries for 100 yards in the last 2 games in the fourth quarter, while preserving the lead when the defense knows you are going to hand it off, knows that you're not going to do anything else. You're leading by 30 at Georgia Tech. You're leading by 21 at Virginia Tech. They know you're handing it off, and Izzy Abanikanda goes 18 for $1. There's something there. There's something to be said for that. And again, if you watch the Kenny Pickett show, we talked about this, that, yeah, they only scored 10 points in the second half at Georgia Tech, but they were able to stack this 8-minute drive and another 4-minute drive and another 4-minute drive. They were able to drain the clock and kill it. And same thing, this game today at Virginia Tech, they didn't score any points in the fourth quarter, but they drove for 11 minutes and 28 seconds. Now, maybe Virginia Tech gave up. It was probably pretty soul-sucking to have a team just run the ball down your throat like that and just be unable to stop them. But I think it's a real credit to this offense and something that we need to start, really kind of recognizing that they're capable of doing, that they can kill a game when they need to or when they want to, And so it'll be interesting to see if they're able to take that success and duplicate it in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, to really establish that effective running game to build the passing game off of. PBR Vampire. First of all, that's a great name. PBR Vampire. You're like a spooky college days or something. because I drank a lot of PBR in college. PBR Vampire says, what a huge win. Obviously, next week is important, but that was a huge game to win. We as Pitt fans always seem to say the next game is the goalpost, but we took care of business today. You're absolutely right, PBR. Pitt fans always, want to look at it and say, well, the next game is the game that Pitt always loses. And look, you're going to hear that all week this week. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, you're not just going to hear it from Pitt fans, okay? Prepare your anger and consternation right off the bat, because you're going to hear it from the local media all week. Well, the classic Pitt move would be to build up all this hype and then blow it when they get a real opponent. That's what you're going to hear. And even if Pitt goes out and loses to Clemson on Saturday, or especially if Pitt goes out and loses to Clemson on Saturday, you're going to hear it endlessly. Get ready for it, okay? And you're going to hear it from Pitt fans too. But the local media, don't look for validation from the local media. Just don't bother with it. All right? It might come, it might not. There will be some that do. There will be some that give some praise to Pitt, and there will be plenty that don't, that say, well, let's see what they do when they play a real team. This is the classic Pitt move, is to build up all this hype and then lose. Just don't even, just ignore it, all right? Because you're going to hear it. You know it's going to come. Just ignore it. Pitt fans are definitely going to look at this game against Clemson as one that Pitt teams in the past would lose, where they build momentum and, are unable to sustain it when they get a real chance. Because, look, if you go out and beat Clemson, all right, and there always will be a next game that will be an opportunity to lose, but you go out and beat Clemson, you're 6-1, 3-0 in the ACC, and you've beat two conference teams on the road, you beat Tennessee on the road, and you beat Clemson at home. I mean, I think you're legitimately... you obviously climb into the top 20. You potentially climb into the top 25, depending on how good you look, if you beat Clemson. And now you're coming up close. When did they first announce the first college football playoff rankings? You're going to start getting respect in that regard, too. Is it the same things we talked about a week ago? That this path is laying out there for Pitt. The opportunity is right there, and you can take advantage of it. And they did today. Just like they did 2 weeks ago at Georgia Tech. They did it again at Blacksburg today. Scott Eisenberg says, still a lot of frustrating things, but definitely nice to come out with a relatively stress-free win. Yeah, I think, there were some frustrating moments. I think there were a couple missed tackles. There were some times where you wish the coverage was a little bit better, or maybe the coverage assignments were a little bit better. There were times where they were running and you didn't know why they weren't throwing, and they were throwing when you didn't know why they weren't running. There were questionable moments. Maybe they snapped it too fast in the third quarter. There were probably some of those situations as well. But on the whole, I still come back to the fact that I liked how this team responded to adversity. Particularly on the offense, where they hadn't really been challenged like that all season, and certainly not at Georgia Tech. And they come out and they get really challenged in this game, and they respond to it. They don't just back down. I didn't sense a lot of panic or anything like that. They just kept going with it, knowing that the offense is good enough, that the players are good enough, the talent is good enough, the scheme is good enough, that eventually they'll break through. And eventually they did. Let's see here. Eric Rogers says, Virginia concerns me a little. Virginia and North Carolina both have really good quarterbacks, and they're both going to probably put up a bunch of yards and a decent amount of points against Pitt. I referenced the 2019 North Carolina game. Forget if that was on the podcast or on the Panthers Insider Show, but I referenced that 2019 North Carolina game where Sam Howell had a lot of success against Pitt until it really kind of mattered at the end, and Pitt really, Pitt's defense stepped up. Now, I don't think his offensive line is as good as it was 2 years ago. I think those guys are pretty suspect, and they should be able to get to Howell and force him into bad decisions and potentially some mistakes. But as far as Virginia goes, I think it's one of those cases where can Pitt win a shootout if they have to? And I'm kind of inclined to think that they can, because I don't think Virginia's defense is as good as Virginia Tech's, despite them shutting out Duke today. Let's see. Kurt46 says, hate that some of the old things reared their head this week. Drops, penalties, big plays. Hopefully they can clean these up again because they haven't been too prevalent this season thus far. Yeah, drops were a problem. There were drop passes. Not all the passes were perfectly thrown, but there were a bunch that were catchable. Kenny Pickett finishes 22 of 37. I don't think those 15 incompletes, were all good defensive plays. I think there were plays that hit the receivers in the hands, and they weren't caught. Penalties were a problem too. 9 for 74. It's too many. I mean, you can't have 9 penalties. You need to be better than that. I think you're absolutely right. You need to clean it up. And the big plays, they're going to come. You're going to give up some of those plays. You just have to limit them, minimize them, and don't let the opponent string them together and try to, not give up more than one on a drive. Let's see here. Josh Lobig says Wendell Davis was laying the hurt on people today. Yeah, Wendell Davis got a ton of playing time. Brandon George got a lot of playing time at middle linebacker. Phil Campbell was out apparently due to an injury, so Servassier Dennis slid back outside. Dennis ended up with team-high 8 tackles, but Wendell Davis was right behind him with 6. He had 6 tackles himself. So, I liked how they played. I thought there were times where I questioned the linebacker lineup, but I mean, you can't have Wendell Davis out there the entire time. And I think Brandon George is a solid player. He only ended up with 1 tackle. He'll have to, if Phil Campbell has to miss more time, or if they decide they want to slide Servassier Dennis back outside after playing middle linebacker all season so far, then, Brandon George is going to have to be ready to go. But, I thought the linebackers did a pretty solid job. I thought they did a pretty solid job today. Bags says, if Pitt isn't ranked tomorrow, ... I mean, I'll be shocked if they're not. I don't know how they wouldn't be. Sean Conley says, Pitt is it. They broke Virginia Tech will on the final drive. That Virginia Tech defense did not want to tackle Izzy Abanikanda on that drive. Have to keep the momentum going. Yeah, I agree about that. Josh Lobig follows up, says Virginia Tech gave up on the last drive of the first half, to be honest. A little life of the half, but stifled quickly. Yeah, I think Pitt did sort of beat Virginia Tech into submission to some extent. And it doesn't help when your home crowd is booing. It doesn't help when your home crowd is booing. Let's see here. Scrolling through. See what other people have to say. Remember, you can always be a super chatter if you want to get your comments and questions read. Mike S. says 3 road Power 5 wins. Who else can say that? That's a good question. I would have to look and see what see what other teams' records are, but it's pretty good when you can go on the road in the Power 5, face Power 5 opponents on the road and win 3 times. There's no doubt that's a good stat. Oh yes, I gotta mention home field because Pitt should have a home field advantage next week against Clemson when they play at Heinz Field. And look, if you're looking for a home field advantage, home field apparel, right? I got my vintage rock shirt on. Make sure you can see that. It's a pretty sweet one. It's a classic. They got a lot of good logos there. They got a lot of good designs. Home field does great on their designs. They take their inspiration from fans. They know what fans are into. They know what fans like. They pay a lot of attention on social media. And they design their shirts and stuff to really reflect, I think, fan interests and fan themes. You know what I mean? Fan vibes. And but then what they do is they top it off by putting it on a really high quality shirt. Like this is a super soft t-shirt. I've had it for a couple of years now, I think. When did I first start talking about home field? It's been a while, right? I've washed it a lot of times, I promise. And it hasn't lost its shape. It hasn't lost its form. It hasn't lost its softness. It still fits great. It's comfortable. These are some of the best shirts I've had. And I'm a big fan of t-shirts, believe me. So homefieldapparel.com. And the thing is, too, all right, this is the thing you have to know. If you're a first-time buyer at Home Field Apparel, at homefieldapparel.com, you use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R, you get 15% off. Great t-shirts, great sweatshirts, some of the best t-shirts and sweatshirts you're going to have. Great looking Pitt gear. You get 15% off. Promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R. Go check it out, homefieldapparel.com. Let's see here. David Maschio says, I would think this was a very businesslike, quietly dominating victory. The offensive line seems to be gelling with great pushes on both the quarterback sneaks and providing good running lanes. Also, Izzy Abanikanda seems comfortable now. Let's see here. I want to look at the stats. Yeah, 1 sack. 1 sack for Virginia Tech's defense. They ended up with 5 tackles for loss. But, yeah, I mean, those quarterback sneaks, I mean, when they had 4th and 1, I don't think there was any question that it was going to be converted. I had no doubt when they would line up for it on 4th and 1. I'd be like, yeah, of course they're going to get it. And they did. You know what I mean? They got them on the quarterback sneaks, and it wasn't really close. I think they did measure the last one, but they really didn't need to. It wasn't close. They got a great push from the offensive line. And, I think they were opening holes in the running game, too. There's no question. Oh, look, Mr. WMU, Mr. Western Michigan chiming in. Question, how mad are you since we beat Pitt? Group of 5 beating a Power 5 makes me smile. Go Broncos. Yeah, I mean, hey, mad love to, Western Michigan. Good for you guys. I know that game against Ball State, that was a tough one. But you know what? Ball State, they're just taking care of business in Michigan. They beat Eastern Michigan today. So, Western Michigan beat Kent State 64-31. Good job. Caleb Ellaby. He finally had another 300-yard game. Look at that. I was wondering if it was just going to be a Pitt thing that Caleb Ellaby would actually throw for 300 yards. Turns out, no. He did it against Kent State. So, good. I honestly, to be honest, Mr. WMU, I don't care about Western Michigan anymore. It doesn't matter. What matters now is Pitt is 2-0 in the ACC. That's what's relevant. And that Western Michigan loss is going to sting Pitt for a while, no question. But, what are you going to do? If that's in the past and Pitt has a very clear path to some real success, they take care of business against the ACC teams. Let's see here. Chris Bruno says, feel like the way Pitt has beaten Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech on the road is so different from what they typically do when they win. Yeah, I mean, it looked really convincing. And I know that Pitt voice, right, that voice of Pitt experience creeps up in the back of your head when it's 28-7 or Virginia Tech, or when Georgia Tech scored 1 or 2 touchdowns. Oh, no, here it goes. And I understand that. I know where it comes from. We've all seen the same things, but this team was in control. I think this team was in control pretty much throughout this game. And things can always go awry. Football's a funny game. But this team seems to be able to take care of business. Now, Clemson, I don't think is going to be a game where they can just take care of business. I think they're going to have some exceptional, kind of highlight reel efforts. And they got that out of Jared Wayne today. And I think, Izzy Abanikanda too. But I said Izzy Abanikanda, not Izzy Abanikanda. That'd be weird. But I mean, I think to beat Clemson, they're going to need some guys to make some really spectacular plays. They're going to need some guys to really step up. Let's see here. Scrolling through the comments and questions. Michael Haley says Miami is the trap game, in my opinion. It might be. I mean, there's still some cachet in that name, even if the team is struggling this year. But still, I think it's still, guys get up for it. I think guys should still be excited to play against Miami, particularly because, Pitt hasn't beaten Miami since 2017. So everybody on this team, few of those guys were on that team in 2017, but otherwise, they've all experienced losing against Miami, 2018, 2019, 2020. So they probably want to get one. Let's see here. Jeremy Tunney says this team is hitting on all cylinders. A great game. The defense was incredible. Felt like there was no doubt today. Yeah, even when Virginia Tech scored, they scored that touchdown drive, and it was like, wow, they hit this play, they hit that play. But I just couldn't believe that they would. There was no part of me that thought they'll be able to do that 3 more times, and 4 more times to be able to win the game. It wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to be able to keep scoring like that. And so, it would have been great to see a shutout and, see Pitt win 35-0 or 42-0 or something like that. But I was never really all that concerned that Virginia Tech was going to be able to move the ball like that. And to be honest, this game on Saturday against Clemson's offense struggles. Now, Syracuse has a pretty good defense, but Clemson's offense has struggled all season long. They're just not great offensively. this could be a game where even if Pitt struggles, Pitt might have to have some of that resiliency and just kind of keep going back to work on offense if they run into trouble, because Clemson's defense is going to challenge them. But I don't know how much Clemson's going to be able to score against Pitt. I just don't know. I don't see a lot of I just don't know how much they're going to be able to score. All right, let's see here. Joe New jumps in as another super chatter. We appreciate it. It says, only complaint is why do we get quarterbacks and kickers named Pickett and Blewett and others get Armstrong and Leg? Haha, nice to be able to joke after a game. That's a good one. I appreciate it. Let's see here. A few more comments and questions before we roll out. Royce Beacom says Solomon DeShield's tripping penalty was bogus, awfully subjective as to DeShield's intent. I mean, he pushed the guy down. He was running next to the guy. The ball is kicked out of bounds, and he just pushes the guy to the ground. And somebody on Twitter was like, well, his job is to be blocking. Nobody else was blocking. Nobody else was trying to do anything because they saw the ball going out of bounds, and he shoved the guy to the ground. It was an unsportsmanlike conduct or unnecessary roughness, whatever they gave him on that. I think that was a bad, it was on a punt return, punt coverage, one of those. It was a bad decision. It was not very smart. It was not very smart at all. Let's see here. Rich Belt says, what's up with Mac's hands? Yeah, Taysier Mack had a rough one. He was, let me see how many targets he had. 10 targets and 3 receptions. 3 receptions for 6 yards. Oof. Now, one of those, was, the near interception on a screen that he ended up pulling down to make sure it didn't get picked off. But Taysier Mack had a rough one. He had a lot of balls that hit his hands and fell off. He's been better this year. I think he had he's had some good games the last few weeks, but this was not one of them. He struggled today at Virginia Tech, and they need him to be better because if Jordan Addison is not going to be open, if teams are going to work, and I can only presume that Virginia Tech worked to try to take Jordan Addison away, but if that's the case, then Taysier Mack is going to have to step up. Jared Wayne stepped up. Jared Wayne steps up, finishes with 6 catches for 94 yards, caught all 6 of his targets. He has a touchdown, some great plays out there. He stepped up when it was time. Taysier Mack did not. Taysier Mack did not. Bobby Fitzmaurice says, where was Shockey Jacques Louis today? Shockey Jacques Louis had 1 reception for 0 yards. You will recall that was the play where he caught it right near the first down line. Got hit when he caught it, but instead of going down, he kept his balance and tried to keep running and ended up getting tackled and lost the yards that would have gotten him a first down. So that was not a good play, and I don't know if we saw him again after that. It's hard for me when I'm watching the games on TV to kind of keep track of the personnel, but I didn't see him out there a whole lot. So there wasn't much going on there. Yeah, other guys talking about the receivers. Yeah, I think Jared Wayne had a great game. I think, I think Jalen Barden has potential. I didn't see a lot of him. Obviously he was on the punt returns and the kick returns, but I think he's got a lot of potential in the receiving game. We'll see what Melky Stovall can do. It's still going to be about Jordan Addison. Lucas Krull ended up 2 catches for 18 yards today on 4 targets. Those are the main guys. And then you're going to sprinkle in your Jared Wayne, your Gavin Bartholomew, Taysier Mack, and the pretty good group of weapons that they have here. You're going to sprinkle those guys in. I was just looking here, one last stat. I said Pitt obviously had the 11.5-minute drive in the fourth quarter. They finished with 38 minutes and 16 seconds time of possession. 38 and Virginia Tech had 21:44. So you're looking at a pretty considerable difference there in time of possession, 38 to 22. That's pretty good. And a lot of it, comes from having an 11.5-minute drive. When it came time to close things out, this Pitt team, they're finding ways to get it done. Found a way to get it done 2 weeks ago at Georgia Tech. They found a way to get it done today at Virginia Tech. And that's not to say that they didn't. like sometimes you might say, well, they just found a way to get it done. Like it's almost sort of a surprise that they won, but this is not a surprise. They were in control of this game. And the offense just kept chipping away until they were able to hit on some of the plays they wanted to hit on. Defense played stout against a not very good opponent. And they're going to face a bunch of not very good opponents, either on offense or defense. And this Pitt team looks like it is capable of taking advantage of an opponent's weakness. If an opponent doesn't have a very good defense, this Pitt team looks like they can score on them. If an opponent's offense is weak, this Pitt defense looks like they can keep them at bay. It's a pretty balanced team right now. It's a pretty well-rounded team right now. And they're not just balanced in their makeup, but they're balanced in the way they're also developing. Because the running game's coming along. And this was a pretty impressive effort. 44 rushes for the team for 208 yards. And that includes Kenny Pickett going 12 for 38, although he averaged more yards per carry than Vincent Davis. So, Izzy Abanikanda, obviously one of the stars of this game, 21 carries for 140 yards. Jared Wayne, another star of this game, 6 for 94 and a touchdown. Kenny Pickett, I thought, took what the defense gave him. When he had an opportunity, he took what was there. So, Pitt 5-1 overall, 2-0 in the ACC. Going to be ranked. And they're going to host Clemson next week. The path is there, friends. The opportunity is there. And through two, I guess I would say through two opportunities, two situations where they had a chance to do something in ACC games this year, they've capitalized. And now they're 2-0 in the ACC, and both of those are on the road. So, pretty good place to be right now. I think you can have a good week, Pitt fans, and look forward to what should be a great game on Saturday at Heinz Field. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a challenge. There's no question. It's going to be really good defense that they're going to have to try and stop, or that they're going to have to try and score on. And then an offense that's been struggling. It could be kind of tough to. It's going to be tough to. I got distracted because Sour King Vinny just came in as a big time super chatter. Hi, Sour King Vinny. Nice to see you. Thanks for jumping in. Anyway, it's a big one coming up this Saturday. It should be fun. Pitt fans, enjoy this week. Enjoy this week. Your team is playing really well right now. They got some really good pieces to come together. Sour King Vinny, you jumped in as a huge super chatter. You have anything you want to say? We'll give you a couple minutes to, if you have a comment or a question, because if you're listening to the podcast, Sour King Vinny just threw a big donation, a big contribution to the podcast. So I will give him a minute if he has something he wants to comment or chime in on, but or maybe he just wants to say hi. So hi. Let's see here. Oh, TRR says, at a bar watching with no volume, was the wind that bad that it had an effect on the ball and the receivers catching it? Yeah, the wind was a problem. It seemed to affect Braxton Burmeister's passes and Virginia Tech's receivers more than Pitt's passes and Kenny Pickett's passes. But, I think it was an issue. Probably more than I expected it to be. I didn't think the wind would be quite as strong, but, I think it impacted the punts. And I think it impacted the passing game too. So we'll see. We'll see what it's going to be like at Heinz Field. I know somebody was looking at the weather already, but who knows what it's going to be 7 days from now. But all right, Pitt's 5-1. They're 2-0 in the ACC. Enjoy it, Pitt fans. Have a great rest of the weekend and a great week. It's going to be a good time, and make sure you stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet. We got message boards. We'll be interacting there all day, every day, believe me. And certainly for the rest of this weekend, there's going to be a lot of Pitt conversation going on at Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget, Wednesday nights, we have our regular weekly live stream, 8:30 p.m. We get together and talk about Pitt sports right here on YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you're watching the live stream, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you never miss a live stream. And, of course, Wednesday morning we will have the Kenny Pickett Show. So you can definitely look forward to that. So have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining the live stream. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you Wednesday night, and then we will talk to you next Saturday when Pitt hosts Clemson at Heinz Field. It's a big one. All right. Have a great weekend.